Hello and welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring. Today I am going to take a very quick look at Great Western Trail El Paso, which was sent to the channel for review. This is a compact, streamlined reimagining of the incredibly popular Great Western Trail, taking the recognisable themes and mechanisms and condensing them into a 2 to 4 player lightweight filler that is more accessible, plays in about an hour, and can be easily transported for gaming on the go wherever your trail may take you. And while I would say El Paso succeeds in its goals, I am less certain whether the end result is as fun as it could be. The game doesn't exactly make the best first impression. It's from the Green Line range by Lookout Games, so has been produced with a mind to having a minimal impact on the environment, including being plastic free. That is a noble goal and I applaud the effort, but the resulting components are somewhat lacking and do negatively impact on the gaming experience. The board, for example, is a piece of printed fabric. It's creased so it doesn't lay flat, and the art is so wishy-washy it's difficult to easily read at a glance. Building tiles are small, making it difficult to identify the different icons, and the player tokens, which should be wooden, are thin pieces of punchboard. I mean, seriously, flat tokens printed to look like 3D cubes. Surely that's some kind of a joke. It's a baffling choice, especially when the player meeples are humongous, far too big for the building tiles they will be standing on. The gameplay itself is fairly interesting, at least in principle. The board represents a cyclical route that you as a cattle herder must traverse, with the aim being to get your cattle to El Paso. At the start of the game there are 6 neutral buildings along the trail that anyone can stop at. As the game progresses, players will build more for their own exclusive use. And while it may not be immediately apparent, this board design is actually a cunningly disguised rondel. On your turn, you will move your meeple up to 3 spaces, or 4 with a special upgrade. You can then use all of the abilities printed on the building you landed on. Buildings will let you cycle the cart in your hand, generate money, buy workers, buy cattle, visit the train, add buildings to the board, and much more. If you don't want to, or can't, use the abilities on the building, you can instead use one of the abilities on your personal dashboard. At the start of the game there are only 2 abilities available on this dashboard, gaining a coin or drawing and discarding a card. Once you have completed all of your actions, you draw up to your hand the 4 cards if necessary, and then the next player takes a turn. Whenever a player reaches El Paso, they gain $5 like they are playing cheapskate Monopoly, and then they take one of these cattle. These cattle are basically clag that can be slightly helpful in the early game, but ultimately just fill up your hand. They score no victory points and they don't have a high value. The last thing you have to do at El Paso is score your hand of cattle. You can score each type of cattle once, unless you have any special bonuses that allow you to score duplicates. This hand, for example, is worth 12 points. If you have earned any certificates, marked on the certificate tracker on your dashboard, you can discard 1 or more to increase the value of your hand by the same amount. You then take one of the discs from your dashboard and place it on a trading post with a value that is equal to or less than the points you just scored. Some trading posts can only be used once per player, while others can be used repeatedly, and each may grant an immediate bonus or some victory points at the end of the game. Additionally, the disc you removed from your dashboard will have revealed a new action that you can use going forwards. Note there are some special rules on which discs you can use. Any disc with a black edge can only be removed from your dashboard if you are able to place it on a trading post of value 10 or higher. Removing some discs may also incur a fee. Finally, you discard your hand and draw a fresh hand. And that is how the game continues. The strategy comes from manipulating and balancing your involvement in several subsystems that all interconnect. First there is your movement around the board. Go slowly and you can visit more buildings, performing more actions, but other players may race ahead. Go quickly and you help to set the pace, but at the cost of not always being able to do everything you want. Note that buildings count as a space of movement, while empty spots are skipped over, and any buildings added to the board can only be used by the player that built them. So as the game progresses, it becomes harder to move at speed, and you may be forced to land on buildings that aren't beneficial to you. You can mitigate that issue by unlocking an additional space of movement on your personal dashboard, or discarding 1 or more of your cowboy cards for a temporary speed boost. This leads us to the second subsystem, the workers. There are 4 types of worker, and they can each be discarded at any point to gain the bonus printed on the top: additional movement, additional money, or certification for your cattle. However, each type of worker is also necessary to perform a specific action. You use builders or wild workers to purchase a building. You select the building you want, pay the cost in workers and dollars, and then place that building on any open space. Note that some spaces on the board require an additional fee to be paid before you can build. Building 2A, incidentally, is broken. It lets you pay $2 to get a bonus tile that would normally cost you at least 2 engineers and $4, and then it bounces you 1 space and lets you complete all the actions on that next space. Place this immediately before El Paso and you have a killer combo. So strong and so obvious is this play, I had to look it up, and it turns out the publishers are claiming this is an error on the tile. They say you should only be able to pick one of the 2 actions, either take the bonus tile or move 1 space. Even then, that bonus tile is really cheap and all but removes the need to ever visit the train. Speaking of which, if you want to visit the train, it's going to cost you engineers or wild workers. You simply pick one of the 4 train cards, pay the cost in workers and dollars, and complete the listed actions on that card. These normally grant you bonus tiles that give you extra abilities and victory points, and objective tiles that will score victory points if you can fulfill the conditions on them at the end of the game. Finally, you can use cowboys or wild workers to buy a cattle card from the cattle board, adding that card to your discard pile. This is how you get the valuable cattle so you can score big when you roll into El Paso. In all cases, whenever you use workers, they go into your discard pile and won't be available again until you shuffle your deck and draw them back out, at which point you return them to your worker area. This creates a strong incentive to continually cycle your deck. And that's pretty much all there is to it. The game continues until one player takes the last cattle card at El Paso, at which point everyone else gets one more turn, and then everyone adds up their victory points from trading posts, cards in their deck, bonus tiles, buildings, and completed objectives. It's a very simple game, and that is of course by design, and in theory, I should like it. It does the sort of things I normally enjoy. But there are just a few too many issues for me to really get on board with the game. First, it's a fairly quick game, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of time to build a really efficient economic engine. You really want a hand of different high value cattle and a range of workers, but by the time you can streamline your deck to the point where you can more consistently pull what you need, the game is over. Additionally, there are just too many subsystems to juggle effectively. For example, adding the best buildings to the board takes such a concerted effort, it just doesn't feel like a valuable payoff compared to improving your deck of cattle. And that can lead to a rather mundane experience as everyone cycles around a fairly static rondel, performing the same actions over and over again. I'm also not sold on the way the train has been integrated into the overall flow of the game. This feels somewhat unnecessary, and I get the impression the train is only there because trains are an important component of Great Western Trail. I also can't help feeling there are layers of restrictions in the rules that act like patches to cover up cracks in the design. This is a game with a deck building element where you are constantly being forced to add low value cards to your hand. But according to an official errata, you are prevented from burning more than 5 cards in total. You simply can't get a tight, perfectly crafted deck. It's always ballooning out of control. Yet without that restriction, streamlining your deck would become far too powerful. Whenever you draw a worker from your deck, you place it in your worker area and draw again. And you continue doing this until you only have cattle cards in your hand. That means with just a few high value cattle and as many workers as you can stuff in, you can easily control the flow of your cards and ensure big points every time you visit El Paso. This is also a game that lets you add your own buildings to the board, and yet you are limited to owning no more than 2 buildings, making it difficult to feel like you have any real impact on the flow of gameplay. Furthermore, you can never use other players' buildings, not even by paying them to do so, and that feels like you are often restricted in the actions you have available. And this is a game where every time you go around the board, you have a chance to unlock new abilities, but you can only unlock the most powerful abilities by scoring high value hands of cattle, actively penalising those players who may look to gain victory points in other ways. As a result, Every game I have played has started off full of potential. There is excitement as players enter the trail and make their first moves, yet each of those games has ended the same way, devolving into the same few actions being taken over and over again. And so, while I do think there is some good in this design, while I do think the game hits the design brief in terms of translating Great Western Trail into a more accessible, streamlined and portable experience, and while I do appreciate the inclusion of a solo mode that challenges you with a very tough AI opponent, this game just didn't work for me. I didn't hate it, but it just isn't a strong enough offering to stay in my personal collection. But that is it from me for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please consider pressing the like button. If you really like this video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so, and hopefully I'll see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone, bye bye.